All right, we're going to touch up on all those details I covered in my video yesterday. From severe weather to winter weather, this storm has it all, and it's continuing to progress eastward over the next couple of days with a dangerous tornado threat beginning right now. And I want to cover this. We've had an ongoing tornado watch as of your Monday evening here over parts of southeast Texas and southern Louisiana in that enhanced severe weather risk zone. And that has been as a warm front has lifted northward ahead of this cold frontal boundary and the dry line that is sparking off some discrete supercell thunderstorms ahead of that cold front severe weather line. And that has our tornado outbreak looking like this for today. This is your tornado outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. A 10 to 14% hatched area for tornado concerns there to parts of southeast Texas, just east of Houston, including Lake Charles, Louisiana, parts of New Orleans, Louisiana, southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, as well as far western Florida Panhandle, and it will extend eastward into the day on Tuesday. Your wind threat's really going to elevate as that line pushes eastward, so parts of Louisiana coast, parts of the Mississippi Gulf Coast, as well as Alabama Gulf Coast and the far western Florida Panhandle. That is where we could see 60, 70 mile per hour wind gusts, along with that threat for those tornadoes. But again, this is all part of that enhanced or slight risk zone that we have over this region. Wouldn't rule out severe weather as far north as parts of southern Arkansas as well as central Mississippi. All right, let's get into the timing of these storms. This afternoon, we had a tornado report over parts of Cold Spring, Texas there. And then as we make our way through the rest of this evening, we've got that tornado watch in place. We'll continue to see these get shifted eastward through the nighttime hours. By the way, I apologize for these blue state borders. I forgot to turn them over to black. I'm in the rush of making this update for you as quickly as possible. But again, this is that existing tornado watch area as I'm filming this. The watches, I'm sure, through the rest of the evening, we'll probably see one get issued over this area I've circled. Everyone in those areas I've circled likely to see some sort of watch pretty much right along the Gulf Coast there through the rest of this evening. So here we go. 5, 6, 7 o'clock Central Time this evening. Look at how the storms really blossom on up. In fact, the only thing that might actually hamper these storms is the quantity of the storms. There's going to be so many of them pushing through parts of Louisiana, Mississippi. Look at these cells, monitoring those, especially into parts of Baton Rouge, New Orleans down there, for the potential of some supercell-ish nature to them and that tornado potential. Also, those cells along the cold front line back there, still in parts of southeast Texas, not in the clear yet at that point, as well as into parts of southern Arkansas even. Still monitoring those zones for that potential severe weather threat. But here we go. The threat really ramping up in that nocturnal environment as the Storm Prediction Center has listed. So really monitor these cells from Beaumont, Texas, on up through parts of central Louisiana here as we make our way into the nighttime hours. Okay, I really want you to be ready. 7, 8, 9 o'clock Central Time. Some of these cells in southern Louisiana. Couldn't rule out a spin-up tornado, though, in those in southern Mississippi as well. New Orleans may be catching a little bit of a brief break. Wouldn't completely rule that out ahead of that line, because you can really see that warm front lifting north, isolated discrete cells forming just beneath it in that warm sector. That's where we could see those tornadoes. So southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, the threat really begins ramping up after dark. But it's along that line where we're really concerned about the potential for dangerous cells. You can see that Louisiana Mississippi border right here, Jackson, Louisiana, right down there towards the New Orleans area. All these areas just really starting to fill in with this activity. There's those discrete cells pumping south to north ahead of the line at midnight, and there's the line moving in from the west. And look at how the cells fill in all around New Orleans, right around Gulfport, Mississippi, Biloxi. These areas really seeing those isolated cells. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have got all these isolated cells, kinks in the lines. Remember, there's damaging winds on that severe weather line already. We're looking at these embedded cells popping up along it as well. This could create for potentially a devastating night with tornado potential down here. And the worst that happens is that this doesn't play out, so just prepare for it as if it will. Get ready to get in that lowest, most interior room in that area I just circled as well. Into the western Florida Panhandle, things start to ramp up after 1, 2 a.m. especially, I think. And we'll see kind of this early morning threat over there as well along the I-10 corridor in western Florida. And look at this, we're kind of monitoring that line. Once you're behind the line, the cold front line, that's when you're done. But we've still got the south to north flow ahead of it. Parts of Gulfport, Mobile being slammed by the line itself around 3, 4 a.m. Central Time, by the way. But Pensacola in Florida, Panama City, those two big locations, really looking at the highest potential for the tornadoes overnight tonight as that southerly flow elevates. But again, we're still monitoring that line into the day tomorrow, and we'll get into the details of that in just a second. But I did want to show you some products from your local National Weather Service if you're in New Orleans. Scattered to numerous severe storms, wind this afternoon through overnight and into early Tuesday morning before daybreak. Notice this is a National Weather Service and the terms are very broad. There is a broad period of time from as I'm filming this all the way through middle of the night tonight, and even into early tomorrow morning when we're watching those threats. But tornadoes, in fact, at the high end of the threat scale. Flooding also a big concern. Please stay weather aware. In terms of parts of southern Alabama, we're looking at the time frame being around 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. And then as you enter the Florida Panhandle, parts of maybe even South Georgia, or excuse me, southern and eastern Alabama getting in on this, 12 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Time tomorrow morning. So be prepared for the severe storms to work their way on into the area in that time frame, as the Mobile Pensacola office is a little bit on top of that timing, kind of, as we have a little bit more certainty there. But in terms of your severe weather outlook as we make our way towards our Tuesday, look at this. It shifts into parts of the rest of Florida, especially the northern part of the state, as well as down towards Orlando, even getting in on the risk. Parts of South Georgia, as well as the low country of South Carolina, low country of North Carolina as well, getting in on the potential for damaging winds and tornadoes tomorrow. The risk continues. Look at those hatch zones for tornadoes. One with that morning threat down here over parts of far southeast Alabama, far southwest Georgia, the western Florida Panhandle, and then a secondary threat developing in the low country of South Carolina and North Carolina, as we'll get that Atlantic fetch helping to increase that tornado threat all the way through this region. 70, 80 mile per hour wind gusts, and those red colors certainly not out of the question as these storms push through. Let's get back into future radar here. So again, kind of still hard to pick out those state borders for you here. I apologize for that. But between Alabama and Georgia, you see that line pushing on through into tomorrow morning, 9, 10 a.m. Central Time, really pushing on through. I think from Macon, Georgia, southward here in this part of the line, that's where we could see some linear convective system along this line. This is where we could as well see some brief tornadoes spin on up right at the leading edge of that line. Okay, so there's not going to be quite as many discrete supercells way out ahead of the line as it looks right now. So things could change, but I think most of the tornado threat, it's really going to increase there as we go into the Carolinas here. And let me show you what I mean by that. Again, here's that line. Damaging winds possible through parts of even the upstate of South Carolina, down through parts of southern Georgia, parts of Tallahassee as well tomorrow midday. But these are the cells coming off the ocean. They're going to hit Charleston, South Carolina, Myrtle Beach, Wilmington, North Carolina, these areas. That's where we're kind of monitoring for those to push on shore and potentially produce some brief spin-up tornadoes. And as it does so, we're going to have to really monitor that as those cells push on shore. But nonetheless, watching this line on down through parts of southeast Georgia, Savannah, Brunswick, those areas, North Florida, maybe pushing towards Jacksonville through the middle of the afternoon. But again, continuing to watch these discrete cells that pop up really in that zone I just circled, far eastern South Carolina, southern North Carolina. That is where I'm monitoring that tornado potential to really re-elevate tomorrow afternoon. So that's kind of the new part of this system. Still that existing line, though, pushing through parts of Florida. Could we see embedded kinks and some tornadoes even into parts of Orlando and Tampa? Yes. But again, here we go into the evening hours of tomorrow. The severe threat really does begin to wind down, excluding far eastern North Carolina as well as central and southern Florida at this point, as the line and some of those discrete cells have not quite yet cleared. But look at how as we go through the rest of the evening, things really begin to break on up as that line pushes offshore, and we're pretty much in the clear finally. So really a pretty brief event, all things considered, but it's going to feel like it takes a long time to move through. But trust me, this line is going to come through really quickly, and it's going to push offshore pretty quickly as well. It's those storms ahead of it that could be really pesky, long-lasting, and dangerous. Now, your weather prediction flood threat day by day. This is your Weather Prediction Center, level 3 of 4 flood threat into parts of southeast Louisiana, southern Mississippi, southern Alabama. So this is as we go through the rest of this Monday evening into the Monday night time frame. Along with those severe storms, you could have tornado and flood alerts at the same time. This shifts up the coastline, parts of Atlanta, the upstate of South Carolina through North Carolina, Virginia, the Mid-Atlantic, but especially in this red zone here, big population centers like Philly, Scranton, PA, parts of northern New Jersey, southern New York City, parts of Connecticut, as well as into Rhode Island. All these areas really monitoring your flood threat. That's as that rainfall. This is that model blend rainfall forecast I showed you in yesterday's video, and those totals really going to add up upwards of 1 to 3 inches in many spots, especially in the south, and then again in that kind of re-elevated flood threat there into parts of southern New England. Now, in terms of the winter storm severity index side of your system, now we got those state borders flipped on over to black. You can see here in those orange and red colors, that's where we're especially monitoring extremely dangerous winter storm conditions, maybe even blizzard conditions developing. Again, I talked about this a lot in yesterday's video. Thanks so much for the support on that video, by the way. But let's kind of go and back through and kind of reiterate what's going on with the system one more time. Out ahead, some of the worst impacts of the storm. We get some brief heavy snow to onset parts of northern Illinois, parts of Missouri, as well as into areas of Indiana here. So Chicago, Milwaukee, all these areas probably start off with some snow midnight tonight. As I'm filming this Monday, again, this is Monday evening as I'm talking about this. Snow pushing through into parts of Lake Michigan, southern Michigan, in terms of the state. Look at this, Fort Wayne, Indiana, Indianapolis, starting off with some snow, but it does quickly turn to rain for many. And this is going to be heavy snow, so parts of southeast Iowa, far northern Illinois, far southern Wisconsin, as well as through a northern sliver of Indiana and Ohio. These areas, that's where this is going to start off as that heavy snow. We've got a warm front. I mean, obviously it's not visible, but it is draped right here, and I just drew it in yellow. It's going to be lifting northward, and look at how it's going to create the changeover into all these major cities. So here we go through our Tuesday morning. This is as we go 9-10 a.m. Southerly winds trying to push on in, and we've got Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, all these areas turning on over to rain. Even Milwaukee looking like some sleet rain mix. This could turn over and cause some problems there with slick spots. But again, brief blizzard conditions embedded in this as well as we go into the day tomorrow through parts of Iowa, especially northern Illinois. I'm still monitoring the snow band that will be increasingly heavy throughout the day, as well in the northern glove of Michigan, southeastern Wisconsin, and we continue to this system just really strengthening rapidly as we make our way through our Tuesday, continuing to bomb on out. So parts of the northeast, brief snow ahead of this, but again, it'll turn over to rain. The wraparound flow behind this system, though, will turn this back on over to snow into places like Chicago. And even look down here into places like Nashville, Tennessee, Louisville, Kentucky. Some heavy snowfall might briefly occur Tuesday evening here, so a little bit of a fun side with some of that snowfall. But unfortunately, I have a feeling there will be a lot of big news stories about some of the bad events that happen along the Gulf Coast out of this system. And a lot of people trying to enjoy some of the snowfall wrapping back around might not be necessarily enjoying the snow, as there could be some potentially tragic news stories if people do not prepare correctly. So again, know where your lowest, most interior room of your house is if you're along the Gulf Coast. Last thing I want to touch on, those wind gusts, okay? Strong from the south out ahead of the system, strong from the north right behind it. We'll see these gusts over the high plains this evening, 30, 40, 50 miles per hour. Same goes with those southerly winds pushing through places like Nashville, Tennessee, Huntsville, in Alabama. Again, just to show that to you, western Oklahoma, look at this Enid, these areas, 50 miles per hour. Some of those gusts, 50 miles per hour as well. Places like Nashville, Clarksville, Tennessee. So even if you're not seeing bad storms up here, it's still gusty in the wind department. As that snow onsets over the Midwest, 30, 40 mile per hour wind gusts, which is again how we could briefly see some blizzard conditions ongoing. And we continue as we go through the rest of this evening into the overnight hours. We see some of those wind gusts in the feistier manner here push their way on through. And look at this, parts of Kentucky, Ohio, all the way down into the Carolinas and Georgia, some 50, 60 mile per hour gusts. This area also that I just circled, seeing that wraparound flow and the stronger gusts there. And as we go through our day on our Tuesday, this is just going to continue to ramp on up, especially across the east at this point. Look at some of these wind gusts that we're going to notice over in the Carolinas, Virginia, on up into Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York, on over into Iowa and Missouri. These zones, 50, 60 plus mile per hour wind gusts. Consult your local National Weather Service office at weather.gov to see what your alerts are, including those wind advisories, those high wind warnings. You can, once you type in your location, you can easily find what alerts are available to you, but it is looking like right now a lot of the wind gusts are going to pick up even more along the East Coast as the system heads on through. Thanks so much for watching this update. Decided not to talk about the future upcoming patterns. Just too much going on with this system right now. We will cover that in my next video, though. Thank you so much for being around. Turn on those notifications. That's it, everyone. Hit subscribe.